And before we start the session and I introduce the speaker, let me ask you, how many pictures have you clicked in the last 3 days that you've been here? On an average? 20? 3? 300, okay. I said 3 was like way too less. 300, that's the highest number I've got. Do we have anybody more than that? Man, what did you click? 300. So one shot and then like, no? 15 of them? Okay. How about the others? And what was it that you clicked mostly? Food? Destination? Camels? The sand yesterday? Sorry? Friends, okay. Mountains. What else? Can you be a little loud? Oh, okay, so I clicked camels, mountains, food, and friends. So those are the experiences, and the best way to remember any travel or any place or any event or incident that we experience is through photographs. And I think the life has been made a little easier with technology, with smartphones that help you to blur people in the picture that you don't want them in your picture and they've suddenly come, or just make yourself more beautiful. But the bottom line is pictures are what keep our memories of travel experiences alive. And that is what our next session is. It's a very interesting session. Okay, this is not the topic. The topic is Luck By, Impactful Journeys Through a Photographer's Lens. And this is something that Scott Woodward told me to introduce his session as. He's a photographer with Scott A. Woodward Photography. He's also the PATA ambassador for visual storytelling through photography. So welcome, Scott Woodward, and I'll leave you for a visual surprise.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Lunch is a tough act to follow right after lunch, so thank you for coming back in and being with me today. So, hi, everybody. I'm Scott, and I'm a photographer, and I have an incredible job. I get paid to travel the world, to take photos, to meet people, and to tell their stories. Now, over the course of my career, I visited many dozens of countries around the world, places like Bhutan and Tibet, Tanzania, Mongolia, and even North Korea, just to name a few. I love spontaneous adventure, the thrill of discovery, and the joy of making true human connections. But what I really love are the singular, magical moments that make me say, wow, it's fantastic to be alive. These are the sensations that I try to express through my photos. My photography appears regularly in a broad number of magazines, international magazines, titles like National Geographic and the New York Times, Condé Nast Traveler and Travel and Leisure, a number more. And for more than 25 years, I based myself out of Singapore. However, just 18 months ago, I relocated to Manila, and now I call the Philippines my home. When I first moved to Manila, the very first Filipino word that I learned was lakbay, which literally means a journey, or travel, or to take a trip. However, I would come to learn that the word lakbay actually has a much more nuanced and meaningful definition. Lakbay can also mean a journey that you take away from your usual environment to reflect, to explore, and to better understand yourself. So in essence, lakbay means to take a journey somewhere so that you can journey into yourself. And to me personally, as a storyteller, such journeys are about exploration and discovery and connection. And these represent to me an opportunity to learn something new, to expand myself, to see the world through different kinds of lenses. You know, I once read that a camera is a remarkable excuse to dive deeper into a location than we otherwise would. And I love that definition. You know, searching for a photograph forces us to look differently at our environment. It forces us to explore a place further and to look beyond the obvious and hunt for something unique and special. However, somewhere, somehow, sadly, social media has changed this. Often, instead of enjoying our unique experiences, many people travel for the sole purpose of capturing that perfect Instagram shot. So there's actually an entire Instagram account dedicated to this notion. The account's called Insta Repeat. Okay? The description of the page is deja vu vibes, and the motto, wander, roam, replicate. Now this clearly demonstrates that anyone can take a pretty picture. Actually, clearly anyone can take the exact same pretty picture. But can they tell a story with that photograph? In order to be truly creative, we have to constantly think about the stories behind our imagery. We have to reach further than making pretty pictures for pretty pictures' sake. And in the process, we have to shed the superficial bucket list bragging travel. If we're able to do this, and if we can scratch the surface and allow photography to be the window into culture, oftentimes we'll discover that the most beautiful stories are not set in the most beautiful locations. And only then can we move beyond this insta-repeat IG affliction. Now, in this vein, New Zealand Tourism rolled out a tongue-in-cheek campaign a couple of years ago about what they call traveling under the social influence. Now, it was their effort, the country's effort, to edge out influencer-style photo shoots at tourism hotspots around New Zealand. But the messaging behind this is clearly universal. I'm just going to play you a very brief 1-minute clip from this campaign.
I've been alerted to a situation. It's been happening a lot lately. People have been seeing those photos on social media and are going to great lengths to copy them. I mean, you know them. Hot tub back shot. Man sits quietly on the rock contemplating. Hot dog legs. And the classic one in these parts, the summit spread eagle. Okay, easy does it, sir. Lower those arms nice and slow. That's it, mate. Oscar Charlie, the eagle has landed.
Copy that.
Hi, guys. I've seen all this before. Yeah, we all have. But this summer, we're clamping down on anyone travelling under the social influence, okay? Come on, guys. You've had your fun.
So, like Tourism New Zealand alludes to, I've discovered that the best stories often live in the most mundane or unassuming places and feature the most normal or average subjects. However, in order to have richer travel experiences, and of course to make more meaningful and impactful photography, we have to ask ourselves some questions. Why am I taking this photograph? What do I want to communicate? What do I want people to feel? And perhaps most importantly, what does this experience make me feel? But to get to this space, we have to approach life with more creativity. You see, creativity is a state of mind. We can't turn it on and off because it lives inside of us. But the thing is, it's a muscle, and it needs to be exercised. And in order to do that, we have to practice being inspired. But how do we do that? Through travel. Travel empowers us to be inspired. Inspiration is all around us when we venture off into the world. And true inspiration is really just about being able to reframe the way that we see the world in which we live. And by doing this, we are empowered to look at the ordinary and reveal the extraordinary. But only if we seek deeper and more meaningful experiences while traveling, and we stop just living for the gram. So, rather than going to Cappadocia and sitting in a cafe and pointing hot air balloons, or putting on a pink gown and standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, or waiting for hours in line to ride that swing in Bali, why not help build a school, or learn a traditional dance, or perhaps learn how to weave, or take a cooking class? Look beyond the most Instagrammable locales and gaze at our world through a different lens. Search for a different perspective and engage deeper in a destination. Now, from my experience, more immersive travel not only leads to better and more impactful photography, but it also leads to more soulful, enlightening, and oftentimes life-changing experiences, more than I ever could have imagined. But what does this mean? What does it look like? And how have I done this? 3 ways. The first one is by traveling more mindfully. So these are pictures of Bhutan, and when people think of Bhutan, they inevitably think of Tiger's Nest, that iconic monastery, 400 years old, perched on top of a cliff in the Paro Valley. And I'll tell you what, it's doubtless the nation's most iconic monument, and it's well worth the hike to get there. However, Bhutan is one of the world's most magical places. There's so much beauty and history and culture beyond the typical tourist destinations. On my last visit to the Himalayan kingdom, which was pre-COVID, I ventured to a place called Samcholing. It's in central Bhutan, about a 10-hour drive from Paro. And I went there to visit His Eminence, Kendrupon Rinpoche. He's the 5th reincarnate and the head of an 8th century monastery there. I didn't have any work. I just went for me. You see, the truth is, I was unsettled, I was unhappy, and I was at a crossroads in my life. And I went to Rinpoche seeking assistance, looking for his guidance, and searching, I guess you could call it, for enlightenment. So for 4 days, I visited with Rinpoche and his flock of young novice monks. And from dawn until darkness, we walked around, we talked, we had tea, we joked, we sat together in quiet contemplation. He even took me up into the forest behind the monastery to his secret meditation cave. I opened my heart to Rinpoche, and in exchange, he taught me about non-attachment and impermanence, Buddhist philosophies that are at the root of all Bhutanese culture. Rinpoche explained to me that if we accept that all things are impermanent, then that means that there can be change. And with change, there can always be hope. When I left Bhutan, I had looked back and I had had one of the most special experiences of my life. And I took with me insights and knowledge that I'll carry with me forever. The second way I do this is by traveling more slowly. So a few years ago, I was sent on an assignment to Tanzania, and it was on a walking safari in the Serengeti. I actually had no idea that you could do a walking safari was even possible. So candidly, I'm not a nature photographer or a wildlife photographer. I'm a people photographer. So I was feeling a little anxious or uncertain about my ability to tell the story. But the slow nature of the journey brought me so much joy. What an adventure it was to wander the plains of East Africa unencumbered by a vehicle and to sleep under the starry savanna skies, only a thin layer of tent separating me from all of these wild animals. I mean, I was truly, truly off the grid. There was no internet, and most nights there wasn't even any power. I journaled every night by flashlight, allowing my mind to wander and my feelings to pour out on a page. This time to reflect was something that I'd never really done. Every other night at the end of assignment, I'm downloading and backing up my files. So I had this opportunity to travel more purposely through my days. And I took the chance to see the world anew. I was able to get up close and personal with Mother Nature, and I got to be in awe of our planet and feel tiny in the world. And lastly, I've achieved this by engaging with communities. So earlier this year, I was assigned to photograph a woman named Len Kabili. She's a Filipina fashion designer, and she incorporates into her work traditional custom weaving and embroidery and beadwork that is specially handcrafted by indigenous tribes across the Philippines. So together, Len and I traveled to Mindanao in the southern part of Philippines. And we climbed into the mountains around a place called Lake Cebu, and we met and spent time with the Tiboli tribes. I was there to document Len's celebration of this culture, the Tiboli culture, and her passion and respect for their traditional craftsmanship. I spent 3 days with Len and the Tiboli in their communities, in their schools, in their homes. I immersed myself wholly in their culture and their customs. And the more that they shared with me, the more I was inspired about how the Tiboli marry past and present with such dignity and pride. And my time in Lake Cebu reminded me of the real reason why I travel, which is my desire to build deeper and more meaningful human connections. This one photograph here that I made is very special to me. And this is a dance called the Madal Tahu. And it's a Filipino dance about a bird with a broken leg that was encouraged by the rest of the flock to spread her wings and fly again. This dance's message of raising up others is universal and one that I'm certain we can all relate to. And to me, this image represents a palpable community spirit that exists in the Philippines. I remember making this picture. I stood there with all these people around gazing at this dance, and I was pretty spellbound. And I realized in that moment that it had been exactly 1 year, almost to the day, that I had moved from Singapore, where I had lived for 25 years, to the Philippines. Like so many during COVID, I faced serious challenges. I nearly lost my entire business, and I had to make the very difficult decision to leave my home and relocate to a new country. I understood then, as this dance was happening, that I identified with that injured bird, where the Filipinos have welcomed me, they've embraced me, and they've nursed me back to life with their warmth and their generosity. Their authentic kindness and genuine, selfless desire to help others has enabled me to continue the career I love, to forge new relationships and embark once again on exciting adventures to tell meaningful stories from a new country. It was in those moments, for the very first time, that I felt like the Philippines had truly become my home. And it was in those moments that I realized that my own journey, my own lakbay, had brought me here, exactly where I was supposed to be. Thank you.
Those were some really lovely pictures. Scott, but I have a question for you. Don't go.
We have time for that?
Get on to the task that
Okay.
I know better than anything else.
Okay.
Tell me something. You spoke about how, somebody laugh. I'm a journalist. My job is to ask questions.
Should we take a seat? I had a red light there for a long time.
No,
so.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
You said that most people do Instagrammable clicks, and your video showed how people travel up to the mountain.
Sure.
Have you been vulnerable to that as well?
Have I been
Vulnerable.
Oh,
to
certainly.
clicking those.
Look, I think we all are. And look, at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything wrong with creating imagery that we want to share with people. I think what the point that I was trying to express is that if we look beyond those images, we can find beauty just under the surface. But yes, of course, I mean,
What is the most weirdest thing
you've met
done?
Stephanie, right? I mean, you know how many Instagram pictures I have to take for her? Yeah, I was like,
You can do that for me
I'm gonna give this speech today, and then they're gonna see me outside by the ocean, like taking Instagram pictures of her. So
You can do for me as
Okay,
well.
sure.
I'll be in the queue.
Yeah.
But tell me, to get that Instagram clickable picture, what's the weirdest thing that you've done?
Oh gosh, the weirdest thing I've done. That's a
Everybody
good
has
question.
a weird moment when they're clicking pictures, because just to get that actual shot, you're like,
Well, I've gone to some pretty crazy places. I can't think, you should have prepped me with that question before. I could have thought I've taken hundreds of thousands of pictures. But I've gone to some crazy places to get pictures, for sure. I was talking to people at lunch, and North Korea is probably the wildest place that I've ever gone to visit, for sure. And there was one photograph that I made there that is the most meaningful to me. I was saying at lunch that when you go to North Korea, you're really isolated from all of the people that live there. You follow this very regimented experience on a bus to this place and on the bus to that place. So you don't get to interact with anybody. And I remember that the very last day we were walking up a mountain, and as we came around a corner, my small little group, there was just 2 of us and a guide, down the mountain came about 50 North Koreans. I mean, they were about as shocked to see us as we were to see them. And they stopped, and it was lots of hellos and handshakes, and they couldn't speak English, and obviously I couldn't speak Korean. So after a couple of minutes, someone said, oh, let's take a photo. So one of them had a camera, so we all kind of line up, all these people, and smile. And then before it, just when it's about to end, and maybe this is my craziest Instagram photo, I'm like, wait, and I pull out my phone and I snap this selfie of me with all of these North Koreans on the side of a mountain. And it's probably the most meaningful photo I made in the whole country, because what I think it showed is that we're all just the same, right? I mean, I think that unfortunately society and media alienate certain cultures and people, and I mean, they're just like us. Obviously they are, but I think it shows that humanity. So you have to go to my Instagram to look for that picture now, by the way.
Great start.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for a lovely presentation, the most colorful one since morning at least that I've seen, with all the colors and people.